Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of Project Fairlady. And Project Fairlady is currently sitting up there while we finally start to delve into the heart of the beast. Alright, let's get into it. Alright guys, so before we go any further, quick rundown on this engine. Apologies if you've seen the motor when I previously had it out and pulled a little bit of it apart a long time ago now when I first bought the car. So this engine was apparently a really big dollar build. The previous owner spent quite a lot of money on the Fairlady, and most of it was around the engine driveline sort of combination. Now, he put a ton of coin into this, and personally, I think he got taken for a ride, particularly due to it actually falling a bit short of a lot of the specs that were touted for the engine. Don't get me wrong, it does have some nice bits in it, and it has hung together, but then it hasn't really done a lot of work. So basically, I'll just go over the specs of what we have here. So the engine was built, from my understanding, it's probably about 10 years ago now, but it hasn't done a lot of work. It's probably done, well, I was told it's done 8,000 or 9,000 Ks over that period, like 1,000 Ks a year. So there shouldn't be a lot of wear on everything, I'm assuming. But, you know, it still sort of has had the ravages of time. The last owner, the guy that I bought the car off, for some reason did a cam belt service on the thing, which was done very, very poorly. Whoever did the cam belt service needs a really big kick in the arse. It was, you know, the masters of Celastic were at work there. They didn't replace any gaskets on anything. They just smeared Celastic over absolutely everything and generally made just a disgusting mess of it all. Why someone advised him that it needed a cam belt service, considering it really only had 10,000 Ks on it or so since an extensive rebuild, I really have no idea. Unless there's something that I'm not being told, of course. I've really come to the conclusion that the entire engine needs to be torn down, just so that I can personally check everything myself, just to try and cover all those bases, because I am going to be asking quite a lot of this engine. So we'll go over what it actually has done to it and what it's got inside of it. JWT 500 cams, bigger valves, 1mm oversized valves, so I'm told. I haven't had the heads off to be able to confirm that yet. The heads are ported on the inlet and the exhaust side. I have had the inlet manifold here's off, the exhaust manifolds are obviously off, so I can have a bit of a look in there. It's pretty dirty, so it's really hard to tell, but I think the porting job's pretty crap. There's a lot of inconsistencies that I can see just with it at this stage. Hopefully they haven't destroyed the heads too much, and I'll be able to save them and just port them. Just go over all the porting myself and clean it all up. And just make sure that, everything's good. Strip the heads down, get all the valves out, have a look at all the valves and all the seats and, like I say, all the ports and all that sort of stuff. Get a good look at the cams. So going down from there, it has eagle rods and Wisecoat pistons. It also has a full ARP stud kit, so it has ARP head studs, ARP main studs, and obviously ARP rod bolts that come standard with those rods. So it did have some reasonable ancillary stuff hanging off it. MSP turbo manifolds, GD2860 turbos, Nismo 850cc injectors. It was supposed to have BDE intake, I think, and exhaust cam gears on it, which it didn't have. It only had stock gears on it. Whether or not that's something that was never put on and just bullshitted to me, or whether the owner was told that they were on there, or whether possibly, it's gone through quite a few owners and stuff, whether some, and like I say, it's recently had a bloody a cam belt service done on it. Whether parts have gone missing off the engine at any of those times, I really have sort of no idea. So you can see that it did have some money put into it, and it was a build that was aiming for, you know, pretty decent numbers. You got to remember this was like 10 years ago. That being said, when I got the car, it was only making about 350 to 400 horsepower or something at the wheels, which is well below its sort of potential. Why it had been set up like that, I don't really know, but the car was a death trap anyway. Like, there was so much stuff flogged out on the car. It was in such poor condition. The fuel system on the car probably would have been up to making quite a bit more power, but again, the fuel system was really dodgy, which is a theme that ran through, you know, most of this vehicle. If you go back and watch, or have watched all the early teardown videos, the build quality of everything that was done basically was just absolutely horrendous. The actual engine build itself, I have no idea who did the actual assembly on the engine, so I really sort of can't say what that's going to be like. It does appear to be reasonable, the assembly, but a lot of stuff wasn't done at the time. All the little things that a really good quality build would have done, this doesn't have any of the stuff, all the little details and things, you know. So whether the workshop who did all this work for the previous owner, whether they had someone assemble the engine and then they fitted all the external stuff onto it and installed it, I have no idea, or whether they did the whole lot. They had someone in their workshop who could build engines. I really just don't know. As I say, it's all a bit of an unknown, which is why I feel I really need to tear it down. And there are some obvious signs, like I say, of poor workmanship and just not stuff being done. For example, I've already talked about the head porting, and I think it's fucking, well, it's rough as guts, you know. Like, it's not even up to the standard of what I would do. And you know, I'm by no means a fantastic porter, but I have played around porting heads and all sorts of stuff my whole life, and it's not that hard to get a way better finish than what I've seen on the intake and exhaust ports on this thing. Speaking of porting, it was all supposed to be port matched as well. The lower intake here was meant to be port matched to the heads. It's not. The upper was meant to be port matched to the lower, which it's not. You know, all that sort of stuff. It's just like, you know, all of the things that would take a lot of time and really add up to a quality build have just not been done. Yeah, they've thrown parts at it to make a really good, reliable combination. A lot of it is in the finer detail of things, and that just hasn't been done on this. For example, the first thing I looked for when I pulled the water pump off was casting flash through the main water gallery, and you would assume that an engine that cost as much as this did to get built, it seems to me like there's been almost no block prep on the thing, because one of the first things that you do, and this has been known for a really long time, is you have to clean out the casting flash from the main water gallery. So let's go down and have a little bit of a look at that. Obviously I don't have the rear Welsh plug out of it yet, so you sort of can't see through it, but what you can see is casting flash absolutely everywhere. It's hard to get a light in there. Oh, there's a bit of a spot, but casting flash is absolutely everywhere. Like, even just right at the very start where you look in, there's just these big razor sharp slabs of casting flash, and I can't, even with a torch, I can't see through to the Welsh plug at the other end. So I've got a fair idea there's just so much casting flash in there that it's just like a, you know, the water would have to weave its way through around all of that sort of stuff to make its way to the rear cylinders. So yeah, it's pretty nasty, and that's very disappointing that even stuff like that hasn't been done. And again, it points to the need to actually completely tear this thing down and go over everything. You can see it's had new Welsh plugs and everything fitted to it, so they have had it completely disassembled. But you know, why wouldn't you do something like that? Why wouldn't you seriously start paying attention to those little things when you're putting this kind of money into a build? So what my plan for this is, guys, is to take care of all those shortfalls that were done in the original build. Not only just strip it down and check everything, but do all the stuff that wasn't done, particularly in the way of block prep. You know, we've obviously got to get in there and clean out that main water gallery, pull all of the Welsh plugs or freeze plugs out of it, and just have a look at what's inside all those water galleries, because there was a whole heap of rusty crap inside the radiator, and you know, there was lots of corrosion on a lot of the sort of external pieces coming off the engine, which is probably a lot due to the fact that the thing sat around so much, like without really being used. But again, I'm just kind of guessing, really. So as I say, I'm going to take it hopefully to the place where it should have always been. So a lot of cleanup work on things. You know, it's got some pretty nasty sort of casting flash on these things typically. There's lots of stuff that only takes 2 seconds to do that makes everything a lot easier to deal with, like say this, like this razor sharp casting flash, you know, on areas like this that takes 2 seconds with a die grinder just to knock all that off and just clean stuff up in general, you know. And basically the whole engine needs that sort of attention. Like these areas down here, it's just nasty. As I say, 2 seconds and all that's kind of cleaned up. Clean out a lot of these water jackets and stuff, even on this section here on the heads. Like, there's a lot of meat that can be removed to help flow through a lot of it. Like, you know, the castings are pretty rough, and a lot of the orifices are quite small compared to what they're running into, and you know, sort of what's behind them and everything. This water pump area as well, there's a lot of sharp edges in here that can be just hit with a die grinder just to round them off, and you know, all that stuff while you're doing it, while you've got the tools out and you are doing this sort of stuff, to whip over everything. It really doesn't take that long, and you just end up with such a nicer thing at the end that's, you know, a lot easier to work on and will sort of perform a lot better as well. So what I'll probably do, guys, is get stuck into a lot of the cleanup work as I tear down, rather than doing it on the rebuild side, just so that when it comes time for the reassembly, all of the components that are going back onto the engine are all ready to go, wrapped up. All I've got to do is unwrap them and bolt them on the engine, rather than start reassembling it and then sort of hit a bit of a wall and just go, oh, you know, the manifolds need flattening, or oh, this needs coating, or all that sort of stuff. So bits and pieces have already been done, because I have had various parts of this apart before, but that's really going to be the thing. Like, you know, like for example, this intake manifold, I'll probably do a bit of deburring and a bit of a cleanup. I've actually already given that a little bit of a scrub, and what I will probably do with that, go over it with a die grinder, and then I've just got to wait till the wife's out of the house, and then I can run it through the dishwasher. Because as we know, dishwashers are really awesome for cleaning car parts. These MSP manifolds are going to get a bit of a cleanup externally, you know, just on the casting for a start, just to get rid of, you know, bits and pieces. They're actually not too bad, but I'll go over them with a flat wheel and a few things just to clean them up, and then they will be ceramic coated. The flanges, like these mating surfaces, need remachining. They're kind of flat. I can tell by the finish on them that they were originally done with a belt sander, and they may have been sort of okay then. And what you find with cast stuff particularly is after a few heat cycles, the casting kind of relaxes and finds its own equilibrium. So it may have been machined flat originally, but after those heat cycles, it tends to, you know, find its happy place, and it really needs to be remachined, because with particularly, again, cast stuff, it is prone to cracking if you're putting a lot of force on it. So you might have a cast manifold like this that was flat when you got it, you mount it on the engine, everything's good, and it either starts to leak, or it may actually even develop a crack. So you pull it off and you find that when it's sitting on the bench all nice and relaxed, not bolted onto anything, it's not actually flat. And that's generally what's starting to cause your leak. And if you do again end up in a situation where you've got a crack, you may find that the crack is actually caused by the fact that this flange face isn't flat, and you're actually forcing it flat with the bolts, because you will bend this stuff slightly with the bolts, with the pressure applied by the bolts to get it to sort of seal, but you're putting a lot of pressure on the casting. So anything that you pull off that isn't flat, whether it's cast or whether it's, you know, an aluminium manifold, or whether it's, you know, whatever it is, basically, you really should check it. And if there's any issues with it, get it machined. Fortunately, I've got a mill here in the shed, so I can mount these in the mill and reface them. And that's something that I'll probably make a bit of a video on. So, as I say, all the prep's got to be done on these. They'll get a good clean up with a grinder and a flat wheel. They get refaced, and then they'll be off to be ceramic coated. And that's kind of the process that'll be going on with sort of a lot of the pieces. So that's where I'm heading with it, guys. It's going to be a bit of a journey, and I really hope a lot of you guys are happy to come along with me for the ride that's going to be the rebuild of this engine. So that's a good overview anyway. At least you guys understand where I am with it and where I'm kind of heading with it. I thought I'd make this video before I actually start seriously pulling it apart, getting the heads off, etc, etc. We'll start on that next week, but for now I think that's a bit of a wrap. So as always, guys, thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed. Always a bloody pleasure to have you here. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and as always, I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Cheers.